Hi, my name is Chris Acton with Acton Creative, and this is a handwoven experience. In today's episode, I'm going to bring you another edition of Design and Weaving with the theme of prioritize. Now, let me set the scene here. Have you ever watched a home improvement show? Oh, they're all over the TV, and I love them. It's not uncommon to be watching a home improvement show and you hear the designer say, now this is going to be the focal point of the room. Have you heard that before? And in this case, it may mean a fireplace or a great piece of art or a really unique sofa or whatever it is. That's what they mean by a focal point. Your eye is drawn there. And while we're not going to be working with fireplaces, as weavers, we absolutely can think of our handwoven fabric as a room, and we can establish a focal point and prioritize. Now, as weavers, we're always working with three elements. We're working with color, texture / materials, and pattern, right? For every piece of fabric that you design, you have to consider those three things, right? And my advice per the design is to not treat them equally. Okay, all right, let's talk about this. Imagine that you're going to do a beautiful piece of fabric that is going to be for a wrap. And you're like, okay, I want it to have great color and interesting texture and a really cool pattern. Okay, those are great goals, my friend. But if you try to do all of that and each element is equal to each other, they're just going to fight with each other, right? The pattern will get lost in the texture, and the texture won't pop as much because of the colors. It's this interesting kind of hierarchy that we need to establish to make a really successful piece of fabric. And you do that by prioritizing, by picking one of those three things and being like, you know what? Every piece is going to have these three items, but for this one, this is going to be the most important, whatever that is. And of course, you'll always have all of three of them, but one is the one that stands out. So enough talking. Let me show you some samples so you know what I'm talking about here. So let's look at this piece right here. Now, when I was weaving this, I was like, texture is king. I knew that I was going to use this funny little weft that made little pom-poms. See it from the side? There's these little pom-poms in it. How fun is that? But I knew that I wanted to highlight the texture. It was all going to be about texture. Now, is there color and pattern? Of course there is. In every piece, you're going to have those three things. But texture was the king. Now, this one has a lot of color happening and absolutely is an important player. But I decided I was going to choose everything so it supported the texture of this particular piece. And the pattern, well, you can see it's mostly plain weave, a little bit of twill. See a little twill in there? But nothing crazy, nothing is going to stand out and could detract from these great little fuzzies everywhere. How fun is that? Let's do another example. So in this piece here, ooh, it's all about the pattern. Look at that overshot. Come on now. Isn't that pretty? So when I was designing this piece of fabric, I knew that the king of the hill was going to be the overshot pattern, that I wanted to make sure that this, when people looked at this fabric, they were like, oh, that pattern is amazing. Okay, great. So then when I chose the other two elements, when I chose color and when I chose my materials, I prioritized them less, right? You can see I went with just some really simple colors. I have like an all cream background and I have this kind of green. I think I actually have a couple greens in there, but I made sure that those supported the pattern that was going to be the goal. Awesome. And as far as texture goes, nothing too fuzzy. You can read the pattern beautifully. Like those elements support the pattern being king of the hill. Let's do another one. So let's talk color. You know I love me some color. Look at this. This was going to be a play on color. That was the whole goal of this. I was like, okay, I want to make sure that this is just a celebration of color. That was the whole idea. So while this piece of fabric absolutely has an interesting pattern and definitely has some nice little texture to it, when you look at this, You don't say, ooh, look at the texture. No, 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 no. You look at this piece and you say, oh, the colors. Come on. So nice. Now, in a little twist, this is actually double weave. So it's not an uncomplicated pattern, right? You have to think a little bit for double weave. However, I knew that the pattern I chose wouldn't detract from the colors. I was prioritizing the color in this fabric because that was going to be what the whole focus was. How interesting is that, right? And texture, I just used me some cotton. I was like, I know the cotton won't be too fuzzy, so you can still see the colors really clearly, and it will support all the other things. Fun, right? So when you think about planning for future projects, just kind of keep that in mind, is that you always have these three elements to work with: color, texture / materials, and pattern. And in order to make a really successful design and make sure that it's communicating what you want it to communicate, I highly recommend that you do just a little prioritizing. Just think about how those things are going to play together. And don't be afraid to be like, okay, this piece is going to be all about texture. That's going to be the focus, the focal point, if you will. This is going to be the art on the wall in my room, the fireplace, if you will. Or color or pattern. Pattern's a very common one. Awesome. Just think through kind of how you organize those things in your design. And I think you'll see some really, really great results. So tell me this, when you're planning a project, do you think about the focal point? What is going to be the star of the show? What is the queen bee of your fabric? Do you think about it that way? And if not, I encourage you to give it a try. See how you like it. All right, friends. Have a good one. Happy weaving.